Hello everyone, once again welcome back to my YouTube channel. So today I am going to revise the topic GIT and I hope you are also revising it with me. So let's begin. So GIT means gastrointestinal tract, and in this we are basically learning about the esophagus, stomach and intestine. These were the parts of the GIT: esophagus, stomach and intestine. So GIT, there are four layers in the GIT, means GIT tract involved the four layers. Those were mucosa, submucosa, muscularis propria and serosa. So mucosa, submucosa, muscularis propria and the serosa. We have to remember that in the esophagus, serosa is absent, and in the gallbladder, submucosa is absent. So these two layers were absent and different. In esophagus, serosa is absent, and in the gallbladder, submucosa is absent. So function, there were two plexus were also present. Like in the submucosa, we have the submucosal nerve plexus, which is also known as Meissner nerve plexus. And as for submucosal nerve plexus, or we can say Meissner plexus, as in Meissner's, there were two letter S is coming, so it means it is present in the submucosa. And as for secretory activity, so submucosa is doing, has Meissner plexus, which is helping in secretory activity, and in the muscularis propria, M for muscularis propria, M for Meyntrich nerve plexus, and M for motor activity. For motor activity, we have Meyntrich plexus, which is present in muscularis propria. Please remember it like this: M for muscularis, M for motor, M for Meyntrich nerve plexus. And as for submucosa, as for secretory activity, and as for submucosal nerve plexus, or also Meissner nerve plexus. So this is about the intro of the GIT. Let's also revise some points. Like the pacemaker cells of our GIT is cells of Castle. So cells of Castle is present, is a pacemaker cell of our GIT, and if there is mutation in the cells of Castle, then it leads to the gastrointestinal stromal tumor. So GIST is due to mutation in cells of Castle. Please remember this point also. Now next one is the esophagus. So let's begin about from the esophagus, then stomach, then intestine. First esophagus, then esophagus tumor, then stomach tumor, intestinal tumors. So normally the esophagus is of 25 centimeters. So esophagus is of 25 centimeter. And how it works? So the upper parts gets contracted and the lower parts gets relaxed. In this way the food particles move in the forward direction. So this part, if this part gets contracted and the lower part gets relaxed, then food move in the forward direction. So contraction is done by the acetylcholine and relaxation is done by the nitrous oxide and VIP. So relaxation is done by nitrous oxide and VIP, and contraction is done by acetylcholine. So now let's learn some disease of the esophagus. So achalasia cardia. A means absence. So there is absence of relaxation of the esophagus, achalasia cardia. So there is absence of relaxation of esophagus. So means there is loss of inhibitory neurons. So loss of inhibitory neurons against the acetylcholine. So unopposed action of acetylcholine is there, and relaxation is not present because there is absence of nitrous oxide and vasoactive intestinal peptide. Now what were the causes of the achalasia cardia? So primary cause is idiopathic and secondary is due to infection, and infection due to Chagas disease, means Trypanosoma cruzi, or due to varicella zoster. So due to infection, varicella zoster, Chagas disease, and primary cause is idiopathic. And clinical feature, what feature is seen if there is achalasia cardia? So achalasia cardia means there is no food particle movement in the forward direction, means there is dysphagia. So there is presence of dysphagia, and dysphagia is more for liquid food particles as compared to the solid. Please remember this also. Dysphagia is more for liquid as compared to the solid. And for diagnosis, we do the barium study, or we can also do the manometry. And in barium study, we find the bird beak appearance, as we see here. The upper, here the esophagus is contracted, so here contraction is there, and all the food particles gets accumulated in this part, so it leads to the mega esophagus, and the bird beak appearance is seen in the achalasia cardia. Please remember this photo, it's very important, that it shows the bird beak appearance which is present in the achalasia cardia. Now next one, how we can treat the eclasia cardia patient. So we can inhibit the acetylcholine. So we can decrease the acetylcholine by giving injection of botulinum toxin. So by giving injection botulinum toxin also we can decrease the level of acetylcholine and esophagus will get relaxed. And also we can do the surgery, and the name of surgery is Heller's myotomy. Please remember this name, Heller's myotomy. So that this all about the eclasia cardia. Now next move to the alcohol induced ulceration, means due to intake of the alcohol there is ulceration, means there is tears in the in our GIT. So first one, in the alcohol induced ulceration we have features of painful hematemesis, means there is chest pain and hematemesis is seen in this. So first one in the alcohol induced ulceration is Mallory Wistier. So Mallory Wistier, we have one trick for remembering of the presentation, like M is the in this the common presentation is like the person drinks alcohol, and after drinking alcohol he has vomiting, and after vomiting he feels retching. So retching is feeling in this patient after drinking alcohol. He has hematemesis, and after hematemesis retching is present. So this is the clinical history which is given in the question. We can find very easily about the Mallory Wistier by this clinical presentation. And in what will happen in Mallory Wistier, we can remember M for Mallory, M for mucosal laceration is there. There is laceration in the mucosa. Please remember in Mallory Wistier, M for Mallory, M for mucosal laceration. Al means alcohol. There is due to alcohol induction. So alcohol induced, and LO means longitudinal laceration, and LO means below the GE junction. So there is it is below the gastroesophageal junction, means it involves the cardia at the cardiac level. So there is tear below the gastroesophageal junction. This is about the Mallory Weiss tumor, Mallory Weiss tear. And in the Boerhaave syndrome we can remember like due to Bohr means due to bottle, Have means hole. So due to bottle means alcohol. So due to alcohol induction there is all the layers gets lacerated. So in Boerhaave syndrome all the layers get lacerated, and it is seen above the GE junction, and Mallory Weiss tear is seen below the GE junction. So it is seen above the GE junction. Now next disease is Barrett esophagus. So in Barrett esophagus, as we already discussed in the previous lecture also, so Barrett esophagus, in this particularly metaplasia is going to take place. So metaplasia means there is conversion of one epithelium into the another epithelium. So in this Barrett esophagus, squamous epithelium is converted into the columnar intestinal epithelium. Please remember, intestinal means intestinal epithelium is present here. So in the intestine, as we all know, goblet cells were present. So here also in the esophagus, if columnar intestinal epithelium is present, means the goblet cells were present, and goblet cells contain the mucin, and this is the hallmark of the Barrett esophagus. So hallmark for Barrett esophagus is goblet cells, presence of goblet cells, and goblet cells contain the mucin, and the spatial stain is Alcian blue. So spatial stain is Alcian blue. For mucin the spatial stain is Alcian blue. And this is about the Barrett esophagus. In Barrett esophagus the reason is maybe metaplasia or maybe gastroesophageal reflux disease also. So this is a precancerous condition. We can also remember it that it is a precancerous condition. And how the microscopic examination, how on the microscopy we find a Barrett esophagus. So please look at this. So in this it is we can divide this by microscopic image into two parts like this. So this is the normal squamous epithelium, and this is columnar intestinal epithelium. So this one is columnar intestinal epithelium, in which we see these low of gland in which there is presence of these white particles. So we can look like this. These white particles were the goblet cells. So these were the goblet cells, and they contain the mucin, and the stain for mucin is Alcian blue. So the stain for mucin is Alcian blue stain. Please remember this. So this is a microscopic image of Barrett esophagus. Now next one is the GERD. So gastroesophageal reflux disease. Please remember it is a reflux, not a reflex. So it is a reflux disease, and the clinical feature which is present here is heartburn. So in this, basically what happened, that the our lower esophageal sphincter were not working properly, they get relaxed. So if the lower esophageal sphincter relaxed, means the acid content will move into the esophagus and the patient feel like burning in the uh, esophagus. So there is heartburn. So clinical feature is heartburn presentation due to the lower esophageal relaxations, lower esophageal sphincter relaxation. So these were sphincters which prevent the entry of HCl into the esophagus. So if they gets relaxed, means there is entry of HCl into the esophagus, which lead to the gastroesophageal reflux disease. So the reasons were due to alcohol, as we study this in the alcohol induced laceration. So reason is alcohol, smoking, or maybe due to overeating. And in pregnancy also this disease found, GERD also seen in the pregnancy. Why in pregnancy? Because in pregnancy progesterone is there present, and in progesterone leads to relaxation of lower esophageal sphincter, and there is also due to increase intra-abdominal pressure. So this is about the RGERD. Next one is the esophageal tumor. So all disease were finished. Now next move to the tumors. So the most common benign tumor is leiomyoma, means the smooth muscle tumor. So esophagus is a smooth muscle tumor. Esophagus is a smooth muscle, so the tumor is smooth muscle tumor, and the name of the tumor is leiomyoma. It is a benign tumor, and the malignant tumor uh, in the esophagus, the middle one third covering is the squamous cell carcinoma. If the tumor is in the middle one third of the esophagus, then the tumor is squamous cell carcinoma, and if the tumor occurs in the lower part of the esophagus, then it is adenocarcinoma. And squamous cell carcinoma is most commonly in the India, and worldwide the most common tumor is adenocarcinoma. Worldwide the most common tumor is adenocarcinoma, and in India squamous cell carcinoma. Now what were the risk factor for squamous cell carcinoma and the adenocarcinoma? So adenocarcinoma risk factor is Barrett esophagus, and for the squamous cell carcinoma we have ASH, that is alcohol, smoking, and hot beverages. So alcohol, smoking, hot beverages. And the other risk factor were Plummer-Vinson syndrome and tylosis at Palmaris. So next, let's revise some points about the Plummer-Vinson syndrome. So Plummer-Vinson syndrome, as this disease contains the three letters, so there is triad seen in the Plummer-Vinson syndrome. So the other name, it is also known as Patterson-Kelly-Brown syndrome, or also known as siderobenic dysphagia. I will tell you why it is known as siderobenic dysphagia, because in Plummer-Vinson syndrome there is iron deficiency anemia, and the presentation is middle-aged female. So the presentation in question is middle-aged female. He has iron deficiency anemia and has atrophic glossitis, and esophageal valves were also present. So it is a Plummer-Vinson syndrome. And if there is iron deficiency anemia, it is also known as sideropenic. Sidro means iron, penic means deficiency, means iron deficiency. So the other name for Plummer-Vinson syndrome is sideropenic dysphagia and Patterson-Kelly-Brown syndrome. So this is the triad of the Plummer-Vinson syndrome. Now next one is the tylosis at Palmaris, which is also the risk factor for the squamous cell carcinoma. So tylosis at Palmaris means palmar. There is involvement of the palm and soles, and at means thickening. So there is thickening of palm and soles. Why there is thickening? Thickening is due to hyperkeratosis. So why there is thickening? Thickening is due to hyperkeratosis, and it is associated with esophageal cancer. So it is associated with esophageal cancer, as I already told. It leads to the squamous cell carcinoma. It is the risk factor for squamous cell carcinoma. And how we diagnose the squamous cell carcinoma or adenocarcinoma? So the gold standard for diagnosis is biopsy, and on the barium study we find the rat tail appearance. And in the clinical feature we found there is dysphagia, and dysphagia is more for solid food particle as compared to the liquid, and vice versa. In the achalasia cardia I told you that there is more dysphagia for liquid as compared to the solid, but in the carcinoma there is more for solid food particle dysphagia as compared to the liquid. And there is also the weight loss, because the person is unable to eat properly. So there is weight loss also and dysphagia also. Now next one is how we can see on the biopsy, how we see. So on biopsy, as we see, these were the keratin pulse. So keratin pulse were seen in the squamous cell carcinoma. So keratin pulse were seen in squamous cell carcinoma, and the other biopsy is these were the glands. So these were the glands. So these dilated were the, this white part which we see here is were the glands. So glands were seen in the adenocarcinoma. So this is about the esophageal tumor. Now next topic is stomach. So next topic is our stomach. So stomach, as gastritis. So if there is a ending suffix used itis, it means that there is inflammation is going on. So gastritis means inflammation is in the stomach part, gastric part. So gastritis is of two types, acute and chronic gastritis, and chronic is of also two types, that is type A and type B chronic gastritis. So first, acute gastritis. So acute gastritis is due to the drugs. So due to NSAIDs, drugs like NSAIDs, due to spicy food, hot beverages, and due to stress also. Stress leads to the gastric ulcer. So stress leads to gastric ulcer, and ulcer is Cushing ulcer. We discuss in the few further minutes. So acute gastritis, and it is due to the drugs, spicy food, hot beverages, and also due to the stress. And chronic gastritis. So chronic gastritis were of two types, type A gastritis and type B chronic gastritis. So as type A gastritis, so A for type A and A for autoimmune gastritis, means the type A chronic gastritis is due to autoimmune, means there is some antibodies were formed against the parietal cells. So in this type A, antibodies were formed against the parietal cells, and as we know, the parietal cells secrete the HCl and intrinsic factor, and if antibodies were produced against the parietal cells, it means that HCl and intrinsic factor level also decrease, and there is, as these intrinsic factors were help in the absorption of the vitamin B12. If intrinsic factor decrease, then there is also the decreased level of vitamin B12 absorption. So this is about the type A autoimmune gastritis, or we can say type A chronic gastritis, and in this pernicious anemia is seen. Pernicious anemia because there is decreased vitamin B12 absorption. Now next type is type B chronic gastritis. B for type B and B for bacteria, means type B chronic gastritis is due to bacteria. Which bacteria? It is due to H. pylori, and H. pylori, it stimulate the HCl, and there is increased level of the HCl, which lead to the ulcer formation. So type B is due to bacteria. Example, so bacteria involvement here is H. pylori. So H. pylori bacteria which stimulate the HCl, and due to which increased level of HCl. So this is about the gastritis, type A, type B, acute and chronic gastritis. Next is the stress ulcer. So stress ulcer. So there were two types of stress ulcers, curling and Cushing ulcer. Cushing, like pushing something. So if there is something pushing, means that there is increase in the intracranial tension. So Cushing ulcer, here mnemonic is pushing. So means there is due to intracranial tension. It is due to increase in intracranial tension, and most common it involves the stomach, and in stomach deep ulcer were present. So in stomach deep ulcer were present. And curling ulcer, curling is due to burns, and the most common location for curling ulcer is duodenum, and most common location for Cushing ulcer is stomach, and in duodenum superficial ulcer were present, while in the stomach deep ulcer were present. So this is about the stress ulcer. Now the complication of gastritis. So the main complication of gastritis is peptic ulcer disease. So the main complication of gastritis is peptic ulcer disease. So as we have some protective factors also, and we have some damaging factors also. So protective factors were very few, but damaging factors are more for the gastritis, for the peptic ulcer disease. So protective factors which protect from the ulcers were mucus, bicarbonate, and COX-1 enzyme. And the damaging factors like increased level of HCl, which is also due to the H. pylori. H. pylori also increase the level of HCl, so it is a damaging factors. NSAIDs, ASH means alcohol, smoking, and hot beverages, and blood group O. So blood group O person also have the risk of peptic ulcer disease. So blood group O person also have the risk for peptic ulcer disease. So these were the protective factors and damaging factors for the peptic ulcer disease. And the complication of gastritis is peptic ulcer disease. Now next one is the duodenal ulcer and gastric ulcer. Let's compare the both of them. So duodenal ulcer and gastric ulcer. So gastric ulcer is the least common. As it is least common, means it is more dangerous. so it really increase the risk of cancer is present. So in this, gastric ulcer leads to the cancer. So in gastric ulcer, risk of cancer is present, while in the duodenal ulcer it is most common, so cancer risk for cancer is not present. So in duodenal ulcer, most common location is D1 of the duodenum part, and in gastric ulcer the most common location is lesser curvature of the stomach. So gastric ulcer least common, duodenal ulcer most common. In duodenal ulcer, most common site is D1 part of duodenum, and in gastric ulcer it is along the lesser curvature. In the duodenal ulcer, the presentation is like the person is having pain during the night, and after eating food, she or he got relieved. So night pains relieved on the meals. So it means that duodenal ulcers were present. Source for duodenal ulcer is gastroduodenal artery, which is the most common source for bleeding in the duodenal ulcer. So the most common source for bleeding in the duodenal ulcer is gastroduodenal artery. So perforation is absent in duodenal ulcer, while perforation is seen most commonly with gastric ulcer. So perforation is most commonly seen with gastric ulcer, and risk for cancer is also present with gastric ulcers. I hope you all get all the points clear about the duodenal ulcer and the gastric ulcer. Now next move to the Meniere's disease. So in Meniere's disease, so this is the condition in which our stomach looks like our brain. So this is a condition in which stomach looks like our brain. As we see here, this is a stomach, not the brain, but it resembles as a brain, because there is in the stomach cerebriform rugivorm, so which is due to increase of the foveolar cells, so on the microscopic examination we see the increased level of foveolar cells, and in stomach cerebriform rugivorm present. So we can remember it like M for males, means it is most common in males, and T for it is due to increased level of tumor growth factor alpha. So this is the Meniere's disease. M for male most common, T for tumor growth factor alpha increase, and the on microscopic examination we see the increased level of foveolar cells. Now next move to the gastric tumor, as the most common benign tumor for gastric is adenoma, and the most common benign for esophageal tumor is leiomyoma, as we discussed in previous video. So benign tumor of esophagus is leiomyoma, and malignant esophageal tumor is if it covers the middle 1/3 part, then it is squamous cell carcinoma, and if it covers the lower 1/3 part, then it is adenocarcinoma. So here the most common malignant gastric tumor is adenocarcinoma, benign is adenoma, malignant is adenocarcinoma, and the most common malignant mesenchymal gastric tumor. Here I am talking about the mesenchymal gastric tumor is GIST, that is gastrointestinal stromal tumor. So GIST is the most common malignant mesenchymal gastric tumor. Okay, so the most common site for maltoma is lymphoma. Now let's start with the adenocarcinoma. So what were the risk factors for adenocarcinoma? So the risk factor were ASH, means alcohol, smoking and hot beverages. A for adenomatous polyp, P for pernicious anemia, blood group A involvement. Blood group O have the risk factor for peptic ulcer disease, and A for adenoma, or blood group A have risk factors is risk factor for adenocarcinoma, and H. pylori and due to genetic condition also lead to the adenocarcinoma, that is if there is decreased level of E. cadherin. If there is decreased level of E. cadherin, adenomatous polyp, pernicious anemia due to blood group A, or H. pylori or ASH, these were all the risk factors for the adenocarcinoma. So what is the most common site for adenocarcinoma? So the most common site is antrum. Antrum part of the stomach is the most common site for gastric for adenocarcinoma, and most common site in a patient with pernicious anemia is fundus, because in the fundus most of the parietal cells were present in the fundus. That's why in the pernicious anemia the most common site is fundus. What were the clinical features? So if the patient has adenocarcinoma, means in the stomach there is mass, some mass is present. So if the mass is present, means there is lesser space for the food to enter, so there is early satiety. The person will feel fullness. So early satiety is seen in the adenocarcinoma, and there is weight loss also, because the person is not is not going to eat properly. So that's why there is weight loss and early satiety. And for the any type of cancer, the gold standard is biopsy. For gold standard for diagnosis of adenocarcinoma is biopsy. Now the classification of adenocarcinoma, so there were two classification according to growth pattern and according to depth of invasion. So let's begin about the growth pattern. So there, if first level is the exophytic or proliferation is there, means above the skin there is exophytic or proliferation, or there is flatness of the ulcer, or there is excavated or ulcerative, means there is depth occur in the growth, and or there is diffuse or units plastica, means the thickness is going to increase. So this is the fourth type of growth pattern. It is also known as leather bottle. Now the classification according to the depth of invasion. So according to depth of invasion, as the layers per mucosa, submucosa, muscularis propria and serosa, if it only involve the mucosa, that is the good prognosis, means it is superficial spreading, it is best prognosis. And if it involve the mucosa and submucosa, it is early gastric cancer. And if it involve all the layers, that is late gastric cancer, and it has the worst prognosis. So worst prognosis if it involve all the layers, and the best prognosis if it only involve the mucosa, that is superficial spreading, has the best prognosis. So this is the classification according to the growth pattern, according to the depth of invasion. And now classification is according to the histological type, that is Lorentz classification. That is Lorentz classification. Please remember, Lorentz classification, histologically type. So it is type of intestinal type, or it may be type of diffuse type. So in intestinal type, it is looks like the circular and glands were present like this. So intestinal type. And diffuse type, it is diffuse. So adenocarcinoma is due to decreased E cadherin, and on the microscopy we see the signet ring cells and associated with the linitis plastica. Linitis plastica means there is thickening. So the growth pattern is thickening, fourth type. So let's see this. So here we see the thickening of the stomach. So this is the linitis plastica. It looks like a bag, and on the microscopy we see the cells were of signet ring cells, means that the nucleus is moved towards the periphery, as we see in all these photos that the nucleus is moved towards the periphery. So it looks like this, that nucleus is moved towards the periphery, means signet ring cells is seen in the adenocarcinoma. So this is the normal cell, and in the center nucleus is present. So this is the normal presentation. But here in the adenocarcinoma we see that the nucleus moves to the periphery and the other part is covered by the mucin. So it represents the signet ring. So this is about the adenocarcinoma. Now spread of the cancer. So if adenocarcinoma spread to the pouch of Douglas, then it is known as Blummer self. And if spread to the ovary, Krukenberg tumor, periumbilical lymph node, then Sister Mary Joseph lymph node nodule. And if it spread to the axillary lymph node, then Irish node. And if it spread to the left supraclavicular, I am talking about the left supraclavicular lymph node, then it is known as Virchow node. So these were the spread of the adenocarcinoma, that if it reached to the ovary, Krukenberg tumor, periumbilical lymph node means Sister Mary Joseph lymph node, axillary lymph node, Irish, supraclavicular, Virchow node. Now next one is the GIST, that is gastrointestinal stromal tumor, which is the most common malignant tumor of the mesenchymal. Most common malignant mesenchymal tumor. So it is most common malignant mesenchymal tumor. So as the name suggests, gastrointestinal, may involve the gastric also and intestinal part also. So the cells of origin is cells of Casal, as I already told in the starting of this video, that if there is cells of Casal, mutation in the cells of Casal, then it leads to the GIST. And the mutation were seen in the CD117 and c-KIT mutation. CD117, c-KIT mutation. CD117 is most sensitive and most specific gene is DOJ1. So most specific mutation is DOJ1 and most sensitive is CD117. DOJ1, CD117 and c-KIT mutation is seen in GIST, and it is due to increased tyrosine kinase activity. So if there is increased tyrosine kinase activity, it shows the GIST. So we have, for the treatment, we have to inhibit this tyrosine kinase activity. We have to inhibit. So we have to give tyrosine kinase inhibitor, that is imatinib. So for the treatment, we have to give imatinib, because imatinib inhibit the tyrosine kinase activity. And in this GIST, there is increase of tyrosine kinase activity. So we can give treatment inhibitor of tyrosine kinase, imatinib. For the investigation of choice, we do the PET scan. So for the investigation of choice, for GIST, we do PET scan. Next one is the gastric lymphoma. Gastric lymphoma, like maltoma. Maltoma is most common in spread to the most common site for maltoma is lymphoma. So it is most common in gastric. So maltoma means extranodal marginal zone lymphoma, MZL. Extranodal marginal zone lymphoma. Maltoma, mucosal associated lymphoid tissue. So maximum malt is seen in ileum, and maximum maltoma is seen in gastric. Maximum malt is seen in ileum, means Pierce patches. So maximum malt is seen in ileum part, and most common maltoma is gastric maltoma. So most common maltoma is gastric maltoma. So maltoma is of two type, due to two reasons. First one is due to H. pylori, and second one reason is due to translocation, that is translocation from 11 is to 18. So translocation 11 is to 18, and it is also due to H. pylori. So if there is H. pylori, means we have to, the maltoma is going to respond to antibiotics, but if there is translocation, then it does not respond to antibiotics. So this is the difference between H. pylori and translocation. So H. pylori, if maltoma is due to H. pylori, then it responds to antibiotics, and if it is due to translocation, then there is no response to antibiotic. Maximum malt is seen in the ileum part, and maximum maltoma, most common maltoma is gastric maltoma, means gastric lymphoma. Maltoma is most common spread to the lymphoma. Now organism stain, as we already discussed H. pylori in so many places. So H. pylori is in gastritis. Reason for gastritis, which type of gastritis? Chronic gastritis, and in chronic gastritis type B. So type B gastritis, H. pylori. Due to peptic ulcer disease is also due to H. pylori. Gastric adenocarcinoma and maltoma is also the reason for H. pylori. And organism or stain which we do for H. pylori is Warthin-Stary silver stain. So the organism for the staining of H. pylori, we have to do Warthin-Stary silver stain. Please remember this also. Warthin-Stary silver stain is done for H. pylori. As we see in this image, these black bag were the H. pylori bacteria. So H. pylori, this is seen on the Warthin-Stary silver stain. And test for H. pylori is Clow test or UBT test. UBT means urease breath test, because H. pylori produces the urease enzyme. So we can do urease breath test and Clow test, and Clow test is positive in this H. pylori. As we see here, this is negative urea test and this is positive urea test, means H. pylori is present. There is presence of the urease enzyme, so which lead to positive urea test. So for H. pylori, we do two tests, Clow test and UBT test, urea breath test and Clow test. So intestine. So in intestine, first we discuss about the malabsorption syndrome. So the hallmark, first is one is the hallmark for malabsorption. So the hallmark for malabsorption is steatorrhea. Steatorrhea means that there is a lot of fat in the stools, and the stool is bulky, frothy and foul smelling. So in malabsorption syndrome, hallmark is steatorrhea. Please remember this, that the hallmark for steatorrhea is the hallmark for malabsorption is steatorrhea. And in steatorrhea, the stool is bulky, frothy and foul smelling. So this is about the malabsorption syndrome. And second one is the Whipple disease. So Whipple disease is caused by the T. whipple. So Whipple's disease is caused by T. whipple, which is a gram positive, and which leads to the intestinal malabsorptions. And T. whipple manifestations were also seen in the heart, joints and CNS. Heart, joints and CNS. Whipple's disease is Pass positive stain. So Pass positive macrophage in lamina propria. So Whipple's disease. So here is the biopsy. So in the biopsy we see that there is a lot of pinkish material as we see. So these were the macrophages, and the macrophages engulf the T villi, and on the pass positive stain we see all these pinkish color. So T villi shows the pinkish positive, means pass positive. So pass positive macrophages in the lamina propria of intestine. So I hope you understand this, that the macrophage engulf the T villi, and the T villi will show the pass positive stain. So for Whipple's disease, the gold standard diagnosis is biopsy. So the gold standard for diagnosis of Whipple's disease is biopsy. I hope you get my point. So next one is the celiac sprue, or we can also known as gluten sensitive enteropathy or celiac sprue. So for this we have in this disease, in this celiac sprue, we have antibodies against the IgA transglutaminase antibody or IgA endomysial antibody. So we have to know that which is most sensitive and which is most specific. So most specific is endomysial and most sensitive is transglutaminase. So transglutaminase is most sensitive and endomysial antibody is most specific. And antibodies against the gluten means against the gliadin, so which in which the gluten is present. So in the bro we can remember it by trick that in bro gluten is present. So in celiac sprue we have antibodies against the gluten, and the antibodies name were IgA transglutaminase antibody and IgA endomysial antibody. So gluten containing food products were like barley, rye, oat and wheat. BROW, barley, rye, oat and wheat. So against this gluten antibodies were produced. So in the celiac sprue on the biopsy we see that this is the normal uh, villi, and here the villi gets atrophied. So villus atrophy is seen in the celiac disease, celiac sprue. So on the duodenal biopsy we see that villus atrophy and crypts hyperplasia is there, as the crypts hyperplasia means these crypts were increased. So as we see they increase. So crypts hyperplasia and villus atrophy is seen in the duodenal biopsy. And celiac sprue most common affected the duodenum, D for duodenum and D for iron deficiency anemia. So most common affected is duodenum, and duodenum here iron absorption is there. So if duodenum is affected means the iron absorption is decreased, which lead to the iron deficiency anemia. Plus it is associated with dermatitis herpetiformis. So celiac sprue is associated with dermatitis herpetiformis. So here the rule is DDD, like most common affected duodenum, dermatitis dermatitis herpetiformis and iron deficiency anemia is seen in celiac disease. So celiac disease shows increased risk of cancer. So we have to remember that celiac disease shows increased risk of cancer, while the tropical sprue there is no risk for cancer, but in celiac disease there is risk of cancer. And for treatment we have to avoid the BRO, gluten sensitive products we have to avoid, and we can take instead them rice and maize, and we can also give the steroids. And for dermatitis herpetiformis we give the dapsone. Please remember that for dermatitis herpetiformis we give dapsone. Now next one is the tropical sprue after the celiac disease. So tropical sprue, also known as the environmental sprue, and it is associated with E. coli. So environmental sprue, E for environmental sprue, E for E. coli. So environmental sprue is associated with E. coli, and in this the entire intestine gets affected. Not only the part of the intestine, entire intestine is affected in tropical sprue. And the most common is duodenum, ileum and jejunum. Please remember most common affected were duodenum, jejunum and ileum, but it affect the entire intestine, and most common were duodenum, jejunum and ileum. As we all know, from the duodenum there is iron absorption is there, but if it affected then decrease iron absorption. From the jejunum we have folic acid absorption. So if jejunum gets affected then there is decrease of folic acid absorption, and from the ileum vitamin B12 gets absorbed, so there is deficiency of vitamin B12 also. So if there is B12 and folic acid deficiency then we call as megablastic anemia, and if there is iron deficiency anemia then we call it microcytic anemia. So there is absorption problem of iron, B12 and folic acid. And as I already told that there is no risk of cancer in tropical sprue, but there is risk of cancer in celiac sprue. After this we have the ulcerative disease. So in ulcerative disease we have to study TB, typhoid and amoebiasis. So in TB we have to remember the ulcers. So in which transverse ulcer is present and which longitudinal ulcer is present. So we can remember it like typhoid means tie is present. So tie, we wear the tie in a longitudinal way. So in typhoid longitudinal ulcer is present. So in tie means typhoid longitudinal ulcer is there, while in TB transverse ulcer is there. So these were seen in the ileocecal region. While in the amoebiasis, which is caused by Entamoeba histolytica, a flask shaped ulcer is seen, and it is seen mainly in the cecum plus liver, and we can stain liver by Anchovy-Sauce stain. Please remember this. Liver can stain by Anchovy-Sauce stain. And amoebiasis show the flask shaped ulcer, as we see here that it is a flask shaped ulcer. It is caused by the Entamoeba histolytica. Mainly involve the cecum part. And Entamoeba histolytica, basically in this the trophozoites were eat by RBCs. So RBCs eats the trophozoites and it shows the erythrophagocytosis. As we see here, erythrophagocytosis is seen here because trophozoites eat the RBC. So in typhoid, as longitudinal ulcer, because we wear the tie in a longitudinal way, so longitudinal ulcer is present in the typhoid. So for the blood, relative lymphocytosis is seen. In fever is a step ladder pattern fever, and for typhoid testing we have to remember this trick. BASU means we have to do on the first week of the typhoid fever we do blood culture. On the second week we do the antibody testing, that is Vidal test, and on the third week S4 stool culture and U4 urine culture were done on the fourth week. So this is a trick for testing of typhoid, that is BASU. And for the treatment of typhoid we have to give third generation cephalosporin, and for the treatment of typhoid we have to give third generation cephalosporin. And if we use the long term cephalosporin, then there is one side effect also, which is a pseudomembranous enterocolitis. So long term uses of third generation cephalosporin will cause the pseudomembranous enterocolitis, which is associated with Clostridium difficile. So as we see in the, it is seen in the mucosa layer. Please remember that it is seen on the mucosa of the intestine, not muscularis propria, not serosa. It is only and only seen on the mucosa layer. Please remember this question. And it is a dirty necrotic material on the mucosa of intestine. And it is pseudomembranous enterocolitis, which is seen on the long term uses of third generation cephalosporin. And cephalosporin is given for the treatment of typhoid. Okay, so on the microscopy we see that there is a volcano eruption. So there is a volcano eruption is seen on the microscopic examination of the typhoid. Now of the pseudomembranous enterocolitis. After this, let's go to the inflammatory bowel disease, means the IBD, inflammatory bowel disease. In this we have to study Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis. So I have one trick for the Crohn's disease, that is Sister Mac. This is our mnemonic for Crohn's disease, that is Sister Mac. So as for skip layer, means in the Crohn's disease, basically we first understand the diagram that this is the our intestinal part. So in the Crohn's disease there is segmental involvement of the lesion. So there is segmental involvement and whole the transmural involvement is there, means entire thickness gets affected in the Crohn's disease. So and there is segmental, means there is skip lesions is present. So this is lesions, here is normal, this one is lesion, and here is normal, then there is one lesion. So Crohn's disease, Sister Mac. So in this, let's look how this trick help. So as for skip lesion, means in Crohn's disease skip lesion is present, as we see here. And I for most common involvement is ileum. So I for ileum, which is the most common involvement in Crohn's disease, is ileum part. As for string sign of Cantor, on the, as we see here that there is a string sign of contour. As we see this is a string sign of contour which is seen in Crohn's disease, Sister Mac. S for string sign of contour. S for Saccharomyces cerevisiae. Anti-SC antibody is seen in Crohn's disease. Sister, S for string of contour, S for Saccharomyces cerevisiae means anti-SC antibody is seen in Crohn's disease. T for transmural involvement means whole thickness is involving in this. Whole thickness is involving in this. E for entire thickness. These were the same things that transmural involvement, entire thickness is involvement seen. And R for rectum is paired. So mostly in the Crohn's disease, rectum is paired. Please remember this, that rectum is paired in Crohn's disease, while in ulcerative colitis, rectum's involvement is there. So in Crohn's, rectum is paired. And after sister, we have the MAC. MAC means on the microscopic examination, we see the non-caseating granuloma. We see the non-caseating granuloma. A for Apathous ulcer. Apathous ulcer means that there is one thickness, here is one thickness. As it progresses, then it combines. So it shows the serpiginous ulcer. So it shows the serpiginous ulcer. C for creeping fat means cobblestone appearance is seen. Creeping fat is seen in the Crohn's disease. So here, this is the granuloma, giant cell granuloma. As a non-caseating granuloma is seen in this. So this is a non-caseating granuloma, and goblet cells were seen in the intestine. And if goblet cells were seen in the esophagus, then it is known as Barrett esophagus. But here the intestine, it is the biopsy of the intestine. That's why non-caseating granuloma is seen. And as we see here, this is the cobblestoning in Crohn's disease. Sister MAC. C for in the MAC. C is for cobblestone appearance, and creeping fat is seen. As we see, this is a yellow creeping fat. So this is about the Crohn's disease. I hope you get all the points related to Crohn's disease by a trick simple. Sister MAC. As for Scipions, ileum is involvement, most common string of contour, Saccharomyces cerevisiae. T for transmural involvement, entire thickness. R for rectum is paired. On microscopy, we see non-caseating granuloma. A for Apathous ulcer, serpiginous ulcer. And C for there is creeping fat or cobblestone appearance is seen in Crohn's disease. After the Crohn's, we have to study the ulcerative colitis of the inflammatory bowel disease. So ulcerative colitis means there is ulcers were present and pseudo polyps were also present. So for the ulcerative colitis, we have the mnemonics, that is colitis. We have the mnemonic, that is colitis. So ulcerative colitis. So suppose this is our intestine, duodenum, jejunum, ileum. So this is the jejunum ileum part, and this is the intestine part, and here the rectum is there. So in the ulcerative colitis, most commonly rectum is involvement. So first the lesion is here, and after that it is spread retrogradely position. So it is retrograde involvement, also known as backwash ileitis. So it is also known as backwash ileitis because it spread into the retrograde manner. That's why backwash ileitis, also known as backwash ileitis. So let's learn about the tricks. So C for continuous involvement is there. So in this there is continuous involvement, no skipping is present, while in Crohn's there is Scipions. So here continuous involvement is there, and most oftenly it involves the rectum. So rectum is oftenly involved. And L for lead pipe appearance is seen, while in the Crohn's disease contour is present, string of contour is seen, while in this lead pipe appearance is seen on the radiopaque image. And I for immunity. So in this immunity, P and K is present, while in Crohn's disease anti-Saccharomyces cerevisiae antibody is seen, while in this P and K is seen. T for toxic megacolon. So toxic megacolon is seen here. And I for increased incidence of cancer more than the Crohn's disease, and I for inflammation means crypt abscess were seen in this. So as we see, these were the crypt abscesses were seen in the ulcerative colitis because there is inflammation is going on. So inflammation leads to the formation of crypt abscess. Please remember that inflammation leads to crypt abscess. So here is one table that PNK and MPONK were seen in the ulcerative colitis, primary sclerosing cholangitis, and Churg-Strauss syndrome, and microscopic polyangiitis. So PNK and MPONK were seen in microscopic polyangiitis, Churg-Strauss syndrome, ulcerative colitis, and primary sclerosing cholangitis. After this, we have to study the extra manifestation or intestinal manifestation of the inflammatory bowel disease, means the Crohn's and ulcerative colitis. So the intestinal manifestation is diarrhea. So diarrhea is C, while the extra intestinal manifestation is primary sclerosing cholangitis, migratory polyarthritis, uveitis, and iridocyclitis. Migratory polyarthritis, primary sclerosing cholangitis, uveitis, and iridocyclitis. Next one is the polyp. So we have two polyps: non-neoplastic polyps, neoplastic polyps, and familial adenomatous polyp. So first learn about the non-neoplastic polyps. So in non-neoplastic means it is not spread, it is not a cancer. So non-neoplastic polyps were inflammatory polyp. Example is pseudopolyp. And second one is a hyperplastic polyp. As we see in this, there is a hyperplastic polyp is there. So in this there is piling up of cells. As we see, the rows were increasing. So this is a piling up of cells seen in rectosigmoidal region. So it is seen in rectosigmoidal region. So hyperplastic polyp is seen in rectosigmoidal region. In this, piling up of cell is seen. And inflammatory polyp, hyperplastic polyp, and third one is hamartomatous polyp. So let's learn about something, a few points about the hamartomatous polyp. That in this hamartomatous polyp, there is first one, we have to study about the juvenile rectal polyp. So hamartomatous polyp include the juvenile rectal polyp. And juvenile rectal, as the name suggests, rectal means most common involvement is rectum, and juvenile means it is seen in the children. And most on microscopic examination, we see the cystically dilated glands. So in this, there is a history of presence of a 5-year child is present with bleeding per rectum. So here we can see that there is dilation of the cystic glands. So it is a juvenile rectal polyp. Please remember this, that juvenile rectal polyp is most common involved the rectum, usually seen in children, and on the microscopic image we see the cystically dilated glands. And the gene which involved here is SMAD4. Please remember that in pathology we have to remember the genes. So JRP, juvenile rectal polyp, the gene is SMAD4. After the juvenile rectal polyp, we have Peutz-Jeghers syndrome. So in Peutz-Jeghers syndrome, it involves the median age. So JRP, juvenile rectal polyp, involve the children. So Peutz-Jeghers syndrome involve the median age people, and the mostly around the age 11. And here gene involvement is STK11. While in the JRP, the gene involvement is SMAD4. Here the gene involvement is SMAD4, while in Peutz-Jeghers syndrome, the gene involvement is STK11. So P for Peutz means pigmentation is there. J for Jagger means jejunum involvement is seen. So Peutz-Jeghers syndrome, pigmentation is seen, and most common site is jejunum. So the most common site for polyps is jejunum. And microscopic ME, we see the Christmas tree appearance, or we can say arborizing polyp. As we see, this is a arborizing polyp. This one is a arborizing polyp is seen in Peutz-Jeghers syndrome. And pigmentation is seen around the, as we see here, pigmentation is present. So mucosal pigmentation is seen in the Peutz-Jeghers syndrome, and it involves the median age person, 11 years, which is 11 years, STK11 gene is there. 11-year age involvement is there, that's why gene is STK11. Please remember it like this. Most common site jejunum is involvement. After this Peutz-Jeghers, we have Cowden syndrome. We can remember it like Cowden, Peat, and chromosome 10. So Cowden, the gene involvement is Peat gene on the chromosome number 10. So here in this, polyps were present, and along with polyps there is Peat, means we can make PB. So here breast cancer involvement, thyroid is there, and endometrial cancer is also present. So in Cowden syndrome, we have polyps present with breast cancer, thyroid cancer, or endometrial cancer. So this is about the Cowden syndrome. After the Cowden syndrome, we have to study about Cronkitt-Canada syndrome. So in Cronkitt-Canada syndrome, we have polyps plus there is nail, hair, or skin disorder present. So in Cronkitt-Canada syndrome, we have polyps plus nail, hair, skin disorders, and it is a non-hereditary disorder. Cronkitt-Canada syndrome means Crohn Kitt syndrome, means nail hair skin disorder with polyps. And in the Cowden, polyps plus P10 is there. Peutz-Jeghers syndrome and JRP, these all were the hematomatous polyp. So hematomatous polyp is done. After hematomatous polyp, we have to study the neoplastic polyps. So this is about the non-neoplastic polyps. Now let's move to the neoplastic polyp. So in neoplastic polyp, adenoma is there. So in adenoma, we have tubular adenoma, villus adenoma, or tubulovillus adenoma. So let's learn about in detail. So in neoplastic polyps, adenoma is there. So in adenoma, we have tubular adenoma. In tubular adenoma, these were circular. Villus adenoma, we have the villi-like structure, and it has the maximum risk of cancer. So villus adenoma have the maximum risk of cancer. And the third one is tubulovillus adenoma. So in tubulovillus adenoma means the tubules were also present and villi are also present. So this is about the adenoma, tubular villus and tubulovillus adenoma. How we can see on the biopsy? So in the biopsy, as we see here, that these were the tubules like. So these all were the tubules like. So it is a tubular adenoma, and here these all were the villi like. These all were villi like. So it is a villus adenoma. But here, as in this image, we see that there is both tubule were also present and there were villi are also present. So it is a tubulovillus adenoma. Here is villus adenoma, here is tubulovillus adenoma, and this one is of tubular adenoma. So this is about the this is all about the neoplastic polyps. After neoplastic polyps, we have FAP polyps, means familial adenomatous polyp. So FAP polyps is present on gene APC gene. Please remember it. It is most important. Then FAP polyps were seen on gene APC gene. Chromosome 5q involvement is there, and in FAP polyps, we have more than 100 polyps is seen, and it is a autosomal dominant condition. So FAP polyp is a autosomal dominant condition. So for the prophylactic, colectomy is done for FAP because more than 100 polyps were present. So we have to do colectomy. For prophylaxis, colectomy is done. And other mechanism of pathogenesis is it very rarely involve the NER defect, that is nucleotide excision repair defect, that is nucleotide excision repair defect. So please remember that it rarely but also involve the NER defect. So FAP is autosomal dominant condition. Gene involvement is APC gene on the chromosome 5q, and more than 100 polyps were present. And the pathogenesis mechanism is that it also rarely involve the nucleotide excision repair defect. Nucleotide excision repair defect. So more than 100 polyps were also seen with classical polyp, Turcot syndrome, and Gardner syndrome. In the classical polyp, only more than 100 polyps were seen. But in Turcot syndrome, as we see, Turcot like a brain, so more than 100 polyps plus brain tumor is seen. So in this brain tumor, medulloblastoma is more common than glioma. Medulloblastoma is more common than glioma in the Turcot syndrome. So in Turcot syndrome, more than 100 polyps plus brain tumor is present. Well, in the Gardner syndrome, more than 100 polyps plus epidermal cyst, osteomas, and fibromas were also present. Epidermis, osteomas means bone, and fibromas means fibers. So osteomas, fibromas, epidermal cyst is seen with Gardner syndrome. So this is all about the FAP. Now let's move to the intestinal adenocarcinoma. So in intestinal adenocarcinoma, as adeno means gland, tumor of the gland. So the risk factors were if there is decrease of intake of fibers in the diet and increase fat, or due to familial adenomatous polyp, or due to adenocarcinoma, or due to HNPCC, or we can say Lynch syndrome. HNPCC or Lynch syndrome, hereditary non-polyposis colon cancer. Hereditary non-polyposis colon cancer. In this, there is defect in MMR, that is mismatch repair gene defect, as we already discussed this in the general pathology video, that in defect in MMR, mismatch repair gene defect is known as HNPCC, that is Lynch syndrome or hereditary non-polyposis colon cancer. Examples of gene defect were MLH1, MSH1, MSH2. MLH1, MSH1, MSH2 defect is seen in HNPCC, which is a risk factor of adenocarcinoma. After the adenocarcinoma, let's learn the sequence of the adenocarcinoma. So for the sequence of adenocarcinoma, we can remember this trick AK53. Mnemonic is AK53. So normal mucosa is there. If there is APC gene defect, then mucosa at the risk is present. So mucosa has risk of adenocarcinoma. So A for here AK53. So A for APC, K for KRAS gene defect, and P53 defect. So this means the AK53 means APC gene defect, K means KRAS, and P53 means P53 gene defect. So this is the mnemonic for adenocarcinoma sequence, that is AK53. So if there is normal mucosa after the APC gene defect, the mucosa is at the risk of adenocarcinoma, and if there is defect in the KRAS gene, then adenoma will occur, and if there is P53 gene defect, then carcinoma will form. So cancers will form if P53 gene defect is there. So this is the sequence of adenocarcinoma sequence. We can please remember this by trick AK53, because it's a very important question. It may be asked in the exams, that sequence of adenocarcinoma, normal mucosa, AP gene defect, mucosa at the risk, KRAS, P53 gene defect. So there is some protective action against the colon cancer, that is FISH and NSAIDs. These were the protective factors for colon cancer. So let's do the colon cancer. Suppose this is the this one is the right side and this one is the left side. Here, as we see, there is proliferative growth, and there is also the proliferative growth, but it is a napkin ring appearance because it does not involve the inside, it is outside. Only the thickening is there, so it is a napkin ring appearance in which bleeding parectum is present. So here in this side, as we see, there is proliferative growth. So there is proliferative growth, and there is occult blood loss in stool. So occult blood loss in stool is seen in iron deficiency anemia, so which lead to iron deficiency anemia. Occult blood loss in stool leads to iron deficiency anemia because we can't see the blood in the stool. That's why it leads to the iron deficiency anemia. So it is seen in proliferative growth, and well, in the colon cancer, bleeding parectum is seen. For the diagnosis, the tumor markers for colon cancer is CEA, carcinoembryonic antigen. Tumor marker is CEA, carcinoembryonic antigen. And on the barium study, we see the barium enema apple core deformity. As we see here, this is the apple core deformity. So this one is the apple core deformity, as we see here, like this structure. This one, it's look like a apple core deformity. So on the barium study, we see the apple core deformity, and the tumor marker is CEO, carcinoembryonic antigen. And on occult blood in stool, we test by GUAC. So occult blood in stool is tested by GUAIC. Please remember this also, GUAIC. It is a test for occult blood. After this, after the colon cancer, we have to study the anal canal cancer. For it is a squamous cell carcinoma. So it is a squamous cell carcinoma. For the diagnosis, so anal canal cancer is due to the HPV, human papilloma virus involvement, that is HPV 16 and HPV 18. Please remember it, HPV 16 and HPV 18 lead to the anal canal cancer. And in this image, as we see, these were the keratin pulse which were seen in the squamous cell carcinoma, For the treatment of anal canal cancer, we have to do chemoradiation more than the surgery, and because we have the post-operative complication of the surgery, that is anal sphincter incontinence. So that's why chemoradiation is more preferred in this case, anal canal cancer. We have to do chemoradiation, and regime name for chemoradiation is Nigro regime. Please remember that Nigro regime is done for anal canal cancer. Nigro regime is done. So that's why chemoradiation is more preferable than the surgery, because surgery have one complication, that is anal sphincter incontinence. So that's all about the GIT pathology. I hope you all get some benefited from this video. So thank you. Bye bye.